we're getting to the good part to why this matters. I took all this time because you have to understand the build up to the importance of these ciphers, all right? Stick with me if you really want to learn. If you don't want to learn, you can leave. I don't care. I don't care about the views, whatever. These are for the people who really want to make it. Gematria Decoding Masterclass, Module 3. We're going to go over the Francis Bacon ciphers and the scripting in our reality via entertainment. Make sure you watch this full video because this one is a gem, and as always, it's an absolute banger. What's up, everybody? Art Turner, D.A.T.A. Productions Media. Dreams are tangible aspirations where we scheme our dreams into existence. Like I said in the intro, we're going to be going over the Francis Bacon cipher, and we're going to go over the scripting in a reality via entertainment. That's going to be, scripture, books, movies. We're going through the whole nine, and it all connects to the Francis Bacon cipher. And you know what I like to do? We talk about, the sports, the scripting in sports. So we're going to have that all today. Guys, this is a jammed-packed video. If you really want to learn about this matrix, if you really want to learn what's going on and how you can use this to your advantage and try to figure out the world in a more expansive way, you're going to watch this full video. And look, I'm going to keep it real. This is mostly about the Francis Bacon ciphers, but we don't talk about the Francis Bacon ciphers till slide 22. It's a buildup that you have to understand to grasp why these ciphers are important, why I would use these, to decode things, right? It's a great buildup. There's 33 slides in all, very dense, and you guys, this PowerPoint presentation will be on my Patreon. It's going to be $3.33 for the access, very basic access. I'm going to talk about that later, but you can get that there. But if you just watch this full video, we go over it. But like I said, slide 22 is where we start talking about the ciphers, the Francis Bacon and the Franc Baconis. And this is 33 slides in total. So stick with me if you really want to learn today. I'm very excited about this. What a time to bring this out into the world, right? I love it. So without further ado, let's get into it. I like to start off my masterclass modules with a quote to get the mind frame and the structure needed for the course at hand. So this is a William Shakespeare quote, and we're gonna figure out the correlation to Francis Bacon later. But let's hear the quote. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 stages. Now, we have some gematria at the bottom. You see, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. So that full phrase right there is 1,370 in English ordinal gematria. We just take that 0 off. It's 137, the 33rd prime, because you have to understand, this is module 3. You should already understand this. 0 is just a value placeholder. So 1,370 could just be seen as 137, which is the 33rd prime. A very magical, a very spiritual number. And we're going to get into why. So, William Shakespeare having this quote means something. And then, so another gematria decode we have is his act being 7 stages from his play As You Like It, right? So, and that equals 322 in English ordinal gematria. We're going to get into the significance of 322 and how that number could possibly be manipulated and perverted by people who script our reality and matrix that we live in. So we're going to get in all into that. And obviously, if you're a conspiracy theorist or you don't believe all the mainstream narratives, you already think that William Shakespeare and Francis Bacon were some sort of psyop back in the day for that entertainment, right? So let's keep going further. Masterclass disclaimer. While I am calling this a masterclass, I am by no means a master. I've been decoding for a little over a year, so I'm always learning. It's a teach, learn, learn, teach, relationship here at D.A.T.A Productions Media on this channel. I'm always studying. I'm always learning from others. So let's go through some of the talented decoders I just want to give some love to, right? I like doing that in the modules. I want to give a shout out to Nate, my boy, his new channel, brand new, DDD231. It's a spiritual, esoteric teaching channel with Gematria. It's amazing. Check it out. We have Goods Decode. He's been doing lives. He's been grinding. So definitely check him out. He's another stocks Gematria decoder with crypto as well. Same on Twitter. Same on StockTwits. He's really holding it down. So check Goods Decode out. We have Waters Above Crypto. I have given him love in the past, but I haven't given him love on the module. You know what it is with him. And then we have Gematria 34. It's a French Gematria decoding channel. Amazing. He's growing. So, keep giving him love and subscribe to his channel. So those are the talented decoders I want to shout out today. Check them out. They might resonate more with you than me. So this is D.A.T.A's pre-decoding pillars. All right. So we have to get in our frame of mind before we get into the Francis Bacon presentation, right? Which is the next slide. But let's get the pillars out the way in the mind frame that I'm coming from and where this presentation's coming from. Everyone perceives the creator's code differently. Try not to judge or criticize someone's decoding method. If you feel as though they could improve to get more concise readings, be a teacher. We are all on the same team in trying to figure out our matrix and our creator's message. Awareness is the goal, not who is better at finding messages. But with that being said, do not fit a square peg in a round hole. While decoding, use common sense. Have a systematic reason for the decode you're deciphering. While the decode practice may vary, it must at least make logical sense to others who want to learn from it. Common and logical sense will help others absorb this knowledge better. We're a team, right? And we're trying to get more people on board so they can wake up and elevate their consciousness to the next level. Okay, and this last one is huge, which I try to teach in my Discord to people who are a little bit younger that need to understand that numbers have positive and negative energy. It flows both ways. We live in a polar world, so not just one number is not bad, it's all about balance. So we can't think of everything when we see a number pop up in the matrix and say, oh, that's a bad number. That's not the case. So this last one's important. We live in a world of polarity. So there's positive and negative charges on everything in this realm, including numbers. Sometimes the number 33, the master teacher number, gets a bad reputation because it's frequently used by Freemasons and the world controllers. But they are using it for nefarious, quote unquote, or bad purposes. But it can be used for good as well, which I tend to do myself with this specific number. A positively charged 33 is good for humanity, right? I try to use it for good intentions, all right? And like I said, I just want to give a shout out to the Discord real quick. If you're not in my Discord, guys, it's free. And if you're in the financial realms, you like stocks, cryptos, please, you just go into the link below, join my free Discord. We're learning. And it's not just about finances. We talk about life too. We add Gematria in. Man, it's a great community. It's all love here. It's all love. So give us a check out, right? Just hit the link in the description. Now let's get into the meat of the presentation. I'm very excited. Like I said, we don't get into the Francis Bacon and Francis Bacon ciphers until the 22nd slide. So we have some time, but this build up that we're about to have is going to be amazing, and it's all going to make sense when it comes time to decode, right? But first, we got to have our building blocks, brick by brick. So first, we have to figure out who is Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon, First, Viscount St. Alban. He was born January 22nd, 1561. He died April 9th, 1626. He was 65 years old. He was known as Lord Verulam, was an English philosopher, a statesman who served as Attorney General and Lord Chancellor of England. Had alleged connections with the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. Said to have edited the King James Bible, which we're going to get into, and said to be Shakespeare. We're going to get into that as well. Francis Bacon's birth, death, date, numerology. Like I say at the bottom, notice the 22, the 55, and 99. We understand 22 is the builder number, right? Who else has 22 connections? The Jesuits, the ones who kind of built this matrix, right? The builder number. And we're going to get into how Francis Bacon, if he truly was William Shakespeare, he built a lot in the reality of a lot of people's minds. So as you see, he was born on the 22nd day of the year, and January 22nd, 1561 has 99 date numerology. And so when you go to his death, which is important, you see that 55. If you join my Discord, you'll understand 22 in new shoes is 55, because on a digital clock, when you flip 22 down, you get 55. So, and the Jesuits like using 55 a lot. So that's where that connection is there. And he died on the 99th day of the year. So you kind of see that cross connection right here, right? That's why I say notice it. Who is William Shakespeare? William Shakespeare, which is funny, he doesn't have a born date. He has a baptized date, which was my first, I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to it, right? If he was never born. So anyway, he was baptized April 26, 1564, and he died April 23rd, 1616, at the age of 52. He was an English playwright, poet, actor, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and the world's greatest dramatist. He's like the GOAT. William Shakespeare is the GOAT, right? In the mainstream ethos of history. You have to understand that. He's often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon, or simply the Bard. Top notch. So we understand when somebody in the mainstream matrix, it doesn't matter if it was on the TV or not, or if it's in the 1600s. If he's at the top of the line, you have to okay, maybe he was elevated there, right? So anyway, his works: 39 plays, 154 sonnets, 3 long narrative poems, and a few other verses, some of uncertain authorship. So, his discography is a gold mine. It's large. It's translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those other playwrights in the world. They also continue to be studied and interpreted. So, heavily studied work. As we come to see, a lot of coding in his work, as we saw in the quote to start this whole presentation, right? William Shakespeare's baptized death and date numerology. So what really pops out to me is he was baptized on 22 date numerology. That's what I'm working with. So that's what pops out to me right off the bat. But moving on to the question that we really want to figure out, even before we get into the ciphers, was Bacon Shakespeare? So, Sir Francis Bacon was a scientist, philosopher, courtier, diplomat, essayist, historian, and successful politician who served as Solicitor General, Attorney General, and Lord Chancellor. Those who subscribe to the theory that Sir Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare's works refer to themselves as Baconians, while those dubbing who maintain the orthodox view that William Shakespeare of Stratford wrote his own works as Stratfordians. Bacon's reason for publishing under a pseudonym was said to be his need to secure his high office, possibly in order to complete his great instauration project to reform the moral and intellectual culture of the nation. The argument runs that he intended to set up new institutes of experimentation to gather the data to which his inductive method could be applied. He needed high office to gain the requisite influence, and being known as a dramatist, allegedly low-class profession, would have impeded his prospects. Realizing that play acting was used by the ancients as a means of educating men's minds to virtue, wow, that's really good, and being strongly addicted to theater himself, he is claimed to have set out the otherwise unpublished moral philosophical component to his great instauration project in the Shakespearean work. In this way, he could influence the nobility through dramatic performance with his observations on what constitutes good government, his own type of mind control, right? That's what entertainment can do. You know, that's what we see. That's what we talk about on this channel all the time, or in my Discord all the time about different shows, movies. They tell us the truth. They give us the ideas that are happening in the Matrix playing out. Happened, 500 years ago as well with Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare. So now let's get into some of the gematria. So really easy peasy off the bat. We don't have to go farther after this, really. Francis Bacon and William Shakespeare, same. 330 English ordinal. We have that 33. All right. I mean, honestly, what else do we need? But obviously, we do more. Writing the reality in sports, I just want to put that out there because later in the presentation, we're going back to it. But you see it's 137 in the reduction cipher. But moving forward, scripture gives us entertainment. Francis Bacon was William Shakespeare. And then we have As You Like It by William Shakespeare, Francis Bacon, all equal 137. The last one equaling 137 in the Chaldean cipher. And the scripture gives us entertainment, and Francis Bacon as William Shakespeare equals 137 in English reduction. Then we have our 56s. We have the Society of Jesus equaling 56 in the reduction. We've talked about them a lot, how they are, in manipulation of the matrix that we live in, right? Two-faced artist. Well, if Francis Bacon was William Shakespeare, he would be two-faced, right? That equals 56 in reduction. And Bacon was two-faced equals 56. All in the same reduction cipher. That's a really good indication, right? And so now I just have a photo of the two theater masks. A happy and a sad mask, right? Polarity, happy, sad. Red, blue, up, down. So the two-face, right? So going further, we're going to get into the date discrepancies of the two faces of Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, right? Of the theater of our matrix. So when we get into the date discrepancies, that brings up the gematria. So the first date discrepancy was, Francis Bacon's birthday of January 22nd, 1561, to William Shakespeare baptized date, right? That was 3 years, 3 months, 4 days. So we're going to keep that in mind, 334. But that was also 1,190 days. We have that 11/9, which recently, and this is dropping in November, and we just passed Occult Day. 11/9 or 9/11 is a huge magical ritual number. Across all the boards. We talk about how 9/11 was the greatest ritual in the Matrix of all time. Well, that was a magic ritual, right? So you could use 9/11, 11/9 for a lot of different things as well. And so it's not surprising that it's going to pop up here, and we're going to go further. So that's the first date discrepancy, the birth to baptized dates of these two. Then we have the death of William Shakespeare to the death of Francis Bacon, because William Shakespeare died first. He died younger. That was 9 years, 11 months, right? Or that was also 119 months. You see, there's two 11 nines or 9/11s there, right? You see that? And so the other one is the birth of Francis Bacon to the death of William Shakespeare, which was 55 days. And that's the key number you need to key in on that we're going to talk about a little bit later, right? It's the 55 days. So let's get into some of the gematria decodes. So we have some really good ones. Get this, tricked and Francis, they both equal 70 in English ordinal, 34 in reduction, and 119 in reverse ordinal. You know, that 11, 9, 9, 11. We also have William equaling 34 in that reduction, along with Francis and tricked. You see? Going further, we have we're gonna talk about the masks, right? We have F Bacon, as in Francis Bacon, F Bacon equaling 41 in English ordinal, and we have sad mask equaling 14 in reduction. 14 is the mirror of 41, right? But they both equal 121 in reverse ordinal, right? So you see that connection. F Bacon, sad mask. Happy mask, right? Happy mask equals 110 in English ordinal, while William Shakespeare equals 110 in reverse reduction. You see that connection. Then we have happy and sad theater mask. That equals 334 in Francis Bacon. That's huge because look, you see the discrepancy of the first one, right? From the born date of Bacon to the baptized date of William Shakespeare. 3 years, 3 months, 4 days. Happy and sad theater mask. 334 in Francis Bacon. Wow! Just wait to how it all makes sense moving forward. Then and it also has 22 letters. Just like we talked about 22, right? So then we have William Shakespeare was happy mask and Francis Bacon was sad mask, equaling 334 in reverse reduction. Wow. But also 55 letters. So we have that 22 and 55 working with the 334s in the Francis Bacon in the reverse reduction cipher. You see how all that is connecting, right? Is the picture being painted? Is the pieces getting put into the puzzle, right? Let's get into another question that we want answered. Did Bacon edit the King James Version Bible? Well, let's go through some quotes for the next couple slides. The 1611 King James Bible is ornamented with Bacon symbols in my own special copy for the record edition, also dated 1611. These symbols are Rosicrucianally marked to call the attention of the initiated to them and to tell them that the 1611 Bible is without possibility of doubt one of Bacon's books. When Bacon was born, English as a literary language did not exist. But once he died, he had succeeded in making the English language the noblest vehicle of thought ever possessed by mankind. This he accomplished merely by his Bible and his Shakespeare. Edwin D. Lawrence, author of Bacon is Shakespeare and the Shakespeare Myth, from a lecture October 9th, 1912. So this is a really old quote, over 100 years old. So even back 100 years ago, this was around. Another one. The Bible, which all of us read and admire from a literary point of view because of its peculiar and beautiful English, was written in that form by Bacon, who invented and perfected that style of English expression. The first editions of this Bible were printed under the same guidance and in the same manner as were the Shakespeare plays. And the ornaments for the various pages were drawn in pen and ink on the wood by artists engaged by Bacon, who worked under his supervision. Every one of the ornaments concealed some Rosicrucian emblem, and occasionally a Masonic emblem or some initials that would reveal Bacon's name or the name of the Rosicrucians. Such ornaments were put not only in the Christian Bible that Bacon had rewritten, but in the Shakespeare plays. They're telling us that everything's encrypted that he writes. And in some of Bacon's own books, and a few other books that were typically Rosicrucian in spirit. Dr. H. Spencer Lewis, Imperator of the Rosicrucian Order during the 1920s to 30s from the Rosicrucian Digest, April 1930. Another oldie but goodie. And one last one from one of the esoteric teaching goats himself. The first edition of the King James Bible, which was edited by Francis Bacon and prepared under Masonic supervision, bears more Mason's marks than the Cathedral of Strasbourg. Manly P. Hall from a lecture, Rosicrucian and Masonic Origins, 1929. All right, so that's what he thinks. That's what Manly P. Hall thinks. And I looked up, how many people wrote the King James Version Bible, and this is what popped up on Britannica, 47 scholars. And we've already talked about how the Rosicrucians were involved, the Masons were involved. So when I put in 47 scholars in the Francis Bacon, cipher, and I get 322 when it goes back to, usually, the Skull and Bone Society, the secret, orders. It always goes back to that number normally. So if it's in this Francis Bacon cipher as well, that's very, very strong in my opinion. So now let's get into some gematria to confirm these thoughts. So look, Skull and Bones writes reality, 333 English ordinal, 333 Francis Bacon, 666 Francis Baconis, and it has 5,555 in squares. That's just like a little interesting one I wanted to bring up. Give them a show to control them equals 333 in English ordinal, which goes back to Skull and Bones writes reality, right? See? Sir Francis Bacon edited the King James Bible, 506 Francis Bacon, so that's that 56. And then we have primes, which is a little interesting, right? 1,037 in primes, but that's at 137 in the prime cipher. That can't be ignored, right? That cannot be ignored, especially when we went over that quote earlier, right? That cannot be ignored. We have writers of reality and writing the reality equaling 223 in English ordinal and 101 in reverse reduction. 101, that's a portal number. We have to think about that as well. Then we have right to manifest and writing the reality, both equaling 223 in Francis Bacon. Then we have Francis Bacon secretly edited the King James Version Bible, 1,111 in Franc Baconis. And just for a little play on words, 1,111 in Francis Baconis Gematria cipher equals 1,221 in Francis Baconis. And I put that in because you have that 22 in the center of the pillars of 1 and 1. And then you have that 333 in reverse reduction. I know that's not actually a cipher, but it's a play on words, right? Then we have build equals 223 in satanic, but also 333 in a reverse reduction, right? Which goes back to this decode right here. We have scripted entertainment gematria and Club 322 Skull and Bones writes reality, both equaling 404 in Francis Bacon. Scripted entertainment gematria, Club 322 Skull and Bones writes reality, both equal 404 in Francis Bacon. I had to repeat it because you have to understand that decode. And look, we go over here, we see the writers equals 55 in reduction. We also have the alphabet equaling 55 in reverse reduction, and Truman Show equaling 55 in reverse reduction. See, the writers, 55, the alphabet, 55, Truman Show, 55. If you haven't seen the Truman Show, the movie, you got to watch it. And then, look, we have the alphabet and Truman Show both equaling 44 in reduction, which can be seen, as 44 over here with Francis Bacon. And then we have, obviously, the Jesuits equaling 22 with that flip to the 55. So that's where I'm coming from, where that's the King James Version Bible derives from. The secret societies. Maybe it was really truly headed by Francis Bacon, but you saw the claims and the accomplishments Francis Bacon has. So you have to understand that he was a part of some clubs, right, in the mainstream world, in the Matrix. So this kind of solidifies that. But they love their magic as well. And with the encoding within the Bible, you have to think that some type of energy came through Francis Bacon and, inspired him to really encode it. Maybe there was a true godly energy that worked through him or helped him in a way. And so we're going to, get into that now. Spiritual help from the god Thoth to write the Bible. Who is Thoth? The god Thoth. Thoth was the god of the moon, sacred texts, the scripture, Bible, mathematics, that can go to gematria, numerology, the sciences, magic, messenger, and recorder of the deities. So literally, it's everything, entertainment. Like we've talked on this channel, you want to script out old ancient stories of deities for the highest levels of magic. That's what Aleister Crowley said, and that's what we said in our LTNC video, me and Nate, on As You Like It. The master of knowledge, the patron of scribes. His Egyptian name was D.A.T.A, which means he who is like Ibis. He was depicted as an ibis bird or a baboon. And just some gematria decodes. God equals 26 in English ordinal, 17 in reduction. Thoth equals 71, the mirror of 17 in English ordinal, and 26 in reduction. So you see the importance of Thoth. He's controlling a lot. Sacred texts, mathematics, science, magic, messenger, recorder of deities. That's almost everything, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of important stuff. So let's get into some more of the gematria decodes to confirm Thoth's importance to the Bible, to Francis Bacon, and the spirituality behind it. So all these match. Look, numerology, magic, and literature, numerology, magic, and scripture. Francis Bacon was gifted with Thoth, all equal 330 in English ordinal and 141 in reduction. That's a strong confirmation, guys. Very strong. Look, theatrical, art, and play on words both equal 55 in reduction, right? We talked about this. What also equals 55? The writers. We talked about the writers. See? That's important. We talked about give them a show them control, 333. And we have another 55 in Franc Baconis. Thoth, the god of magic and numbers, 550, Francis Baconis. We have, and we're going to use the rule where you could, use 1 as a value placeholder. It has no value because it's a parent number. Thoth was the god of the moon, sacred texts, mathematics, the sciences, magic, messenger, and recorder of the deities, master of knowledge, and patron of scribes. That's 515 in Chaldean. We see that 1 as a value placeholder. That's 55. Remember, 1 is as a parent number, so it's technically not a number, just like 2 is technically not a number. Then we have gematria scripture equaling 55 in Chaldean. So you see the connections there. Very important. Thoth, the god of magic and numbers, equals 133 in reduction and 137 in reverse reduction. You see those 33s. Letters and numbers create the world. 133 in reduction goes back to Thoth, the god of magic and numbers. So that's important. In English Numerian, we have 2,202. We have that 222. And we have in Chaldean, that 119, that 11.9, that 9.11. Very important. Letters and numbers create the world. Very strong decodes right there. Francis Bacon wrote the As You Like It script with the powers of Thoth, 303 single reduction. Then we have Francis Bacon used the powers of Thoth to edit the King James Version Bible, 333 in the single reduction. So, look, and that's just where S equals 10, instead of 1. So that's, just a small little tweak, but it makes such a difference in the decodes. And it's beautiful, right? Francis Bacon used Thoth, 303 in Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon, Thoth, magical, 222 English ordinal, that 222. We have that 440 in Franc Baconis. We've talked about that 44. And we have Thoth was the god of the moon, sacred text, mathematics, the sciences, magic, messenger and recorder of the deities, master of knowledge, patron of scribes. His Egyptian name was D.A.T.A, which means he was like Ibis, equals 4004 in Franc Baconis. So you see that 44 playing out. Then we have theatrical art, play on words, esoteric language, all equaling 188 in Francis Bacon. And then we have the god of the moon, sacred text, mathematics, the sciences, magic, messenger and recorder of the deities, master of knowledge and patron of scribes, 1,888 in reverse ordinal with that extra 8. You see the correlations here. Some more decodes before we get into the actual ciphers and why they're important. So stick with me. Stick with me, guys. We're almost done, but we're getting to the good part to why this matters. I took all this time because you have to understand the build up to the importance of these ciphers, all right? Stick with me if you really want to learn. If you don't want to learn, you can leave. I don't care. I don't care about the views, whatever. These are for the people who really want to make it, all right? So stick with me. We're almost there. Francis Bacon used Thoth's magical powers to edit the KJV Bible, 223 reduction. The spirit of Thoth helped Francis Bacon edit the KJV Bible, 2,230 in satanic. You see, just chop off that 0. Scripture, 155 Francis Bacon. We can use that principle where one just gets, isolated, and that's that 55. Thoth helped Francis edit the KJV Bible, 155 reduction. So you see that, the correlation right there. Thoth and William Shakespeare, 551 Franc Baconis, but it's also 1,555 in English extended. So you see the correlations in the number magic right here. You see it? Francis Bacon was the number magic god, 551 reverse ordinal. Francis Bacon wrote As You Like It with powers of Thoth, 1,155, right? So you have the 11 and 55 in the Franc Baconis. And Francis Bacon was a manifestation of Thoth, the god, 550, Francis Bacon. And Francis Bacon was the Egyptian god Thoth, 505 in Francis Bacon. So you see all those 55s playing out, going back to the writers, Gematria scripture in the Chaldean cipher. All important stuff. All important. A play on words. Theatrical art. Like, all important. Goes back to 55. 55 years between the birth of Francis Bacon and, the death of William Shakespeare. That was 55 years. So that comes full circle on why that's important. And look, we go back to the big ones. Tricked and Francis, 70, 34, 119, 47. But we also have God, Thoth, equaling 43, which is that reverse of 34. But it also has that major 119, that 11, 9, 9, 11. Goes back to the magic, right? So of those days. So all very important stuff. So now, you guys, we're at slide 22. It's now time to get into the actual Francis Bacon and Franc Baconis ciphers. But before we get into the Francis Bacon ciphers, I just want you guys to know, look, this is where you can get the PowerPoint. I have all the master classes in here, the Gematria Masterclass General Support. This is only $3.33 a month. This presentation will be in this Patreon tier. But if you love my Gematria stocks and you want to make money off the matrix with Gematria for only $5 a month, you can get that tier. I also have monthly sports documentaries for only $5 a month. I am dropping an absolute banger this month. A banger. Magic vs. Bird, and it's only in Francis Bacon ciphers and Franc Baconis ciphers. That's all I'm using. It's going to be amazing. I already have 5 premium content videos up. I'm building my Netflix. So if you want to be part of the movement, you want to see me grow, that's where you can help support, but you get amazing value. But say, look, hey, you want both my Gematria stocks and my monthly documentaries, my Dream Schemers Ultimate Woke Pack. That is only $8.63 a month. That's a $1.37 discount, the 33rd Prime. This is where you can go to really help my channel. It means a lot to me. Just go into the link in the description below, and you can get started to get this presentation, my stocks, or my documentaries. However, which way you want to do it. But thank you for the support thus far. You guys motivate me to keep going, and we're gonna keep going and keep growing. Finally, the moment we've been waiting for, we're finally getting to the Francis Bacon and the Franc Baconis ciphers. Slide 22, I told you, but you guys have to go back. If you went to this timestamp thinking that you're gonna understand everything, you played yourself. Go back and watch the full video. It's all gonna make sense because we built this up brick by brick on why this cipher is important. It's all about, the entertainment, the theater, the theatrics, and, the manifestation of the numbers and the letters of the world, right? You can write your reality. And you won't understand that if you started right here. So go back. Go back. But if you follow me this full time, let's keep going. I'm excited. So now we have the Francis Bacon cipher in its reverse. Okay? You see, the lowercase letters for the base one is 1 through 26, A through Z, lowercase, and then 27 through 52 is the uppercase. And I just want to throw out there, William Shakespeare died at the age of 52. Hint, hint. You see these ciphers are maxed out at 52, digits, right? Hint, hint. This cipher as well is based on alphanumerical case sets. So all of them go together, right? So the lowercase are all preceding each other. Then the uppercase are all preceding each other. The same thing in the reverse. The lowercase all precede each other, and then the uppercase, precede each other. So it's based on the numerical sets. The uppercase always holds higher numerical value than the lowercase. That's the basis of the Francis Bacon cipher. And we're going to understand more going forward, but this is just the numerical differences of both of them. So now we have the Franc Baconis cipher. Both important, and they both have different twists and flavors that you need to look for when, decoding. So first, you see the uppercase letter is first, then the lowercase. They're grouped together. So for the base Franc Baconis, you have uppercase A equaling 1, then lowercase a equaling 2. So it's the pairing of the same uppercase and lowercase number. Similar numerical value. They're similar in numerical value, but the preceding lowercase letter always has a higher value in both the base and its reverse. So lowercase a will always equal more than 1, right? And so same over here. Like lowercase a will always equal more than uppercase a. Lowercase z always equals more than uppercase z, and same thing here. So the preceding lowercase letter always has a higher value. So now let's get into the importance of capital, uppercase, and lowercase letters. So I got this information from the SUNY Empire State College article breaking this down. Capital letters are useful signals for a reader. They have three main purposes: to let the reader know a sentence is beginning, to show important words in a title, to signal proper names and official titles. Capitalize the first work in a line of poetry even if it doesn't begin a new sentence, unless the poet did not capitalize it. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. So this is just what are uppercase letters. And, uppercase letters, and this is from dictionary.com. Uppercase letters are capital letters, the bigger, taller versions of letters, as opposed to the smaller versions, which are called lowercase letters. Uppercase means the same thing as capital. Uppercase letters can also be called capitals. And so I did some gematria decodes. I just took off those parentheses, right? Uppercase letters are capital letters, the bigger, taller versions of letters, as opposed to the smaller versions, which are called lowercase letters. You see, 551 in reduction, so it's that 55. Then we have uppercase means the same as capital. Uppercase letters can also be called capitals. Dictionary.com. 333 in the septenary cipher, which is a highly scripture divine cipher as well, just like the Franc Baconis. I've talked about that in a previous module. I believe that was module 2, if I believe. Go check those out if you haven't, 1 and 2. Moving further on the capital letters, capital, you see the highlighting. Capital letters are useful signals for a reader, the 3 main purposes. So I broke those down. Capital letters are useful signals for a reader. They have 3 main purposes: to let the reader know a sentence is beginning, to show important words in a title, and to do signal proper names in official titles. Then I put SUNY, S-U-N-Y, equals 2,222 in Franc Baconis. Very strong, right? Very strong. Then, I did the same thing, but I put SUNY Empire State College. Then I get that 888 in the reduction. Then I have Francis Bacon was a manifestation of Thoth, the god. 888 in Franc Baconis. So you see those 3 H's popping up. Very important. And that even equals 8 when you add those together. 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8, right? And then you have capital letters equals 187 in Francis Bacon, and esoteric equaling 187 in Franc Baconis. So you understand why, capital and lowercase are important, but let's keep going further on why, what are lowercase letters and why they are important. They're the shorter versions of letters. And so, look, lowercase letters are the shorter, smaller versions of letters, as opposed to the bigger, taller versions, which are called uppercase letters or capital letters. Dictionary.com, 555 in Chaldean, that 222 flip down, we understand, right? Lowercase letters are shorter and smaller versions of letters, as opposed to the bigger, taller, taller versions, which are called uppercase capital letters. So the same sentence, but the only difference is dictionary.com. Then you have that 2,230, which is at 223, which is the verse of 322. And then I just take that last little definition they have right here, right? The 2 versions of the letter take different forms altogether, such as lowercase a and uppercase a, or lowercase b and uppercase b. Dictionary.com. That's 1,881. You have that 88 sandwiched in between the pillars of 1 and 1. Reverse ordinal. Very important. So moving on, we talked about the poetry a little bit more, so it's getting more back into the Francis Bacon and why it's important, right? Capitalize the first work in a line of poetry, even if it doesn't begin a new sentence, unless the poet did not capitalize it, right? So I kept that, even if the poet doesn't capitalize, begin a new sentence. Sunni Empire, 444 Chaldean. Then we have biblical scriptures can produce magic and reality, 444 English ordinal, 444 Francis Bacon, and we have that 888 in Franc Baconis. You see the biblical scriptures, the King James Bible, writing, producing magic and reality, manifestation, creating the world. You see how it's all coming together. Magic and reality, capital and lowercase, both equaling 74 in reduction. Then you have capital and lowercase, create the world we live in, 1,337 in reverse Franc Baconis. So you can see that as like a 133.7, like a grander 137, how I see it, right? Then you have usage of capital and lowercase letters in words, 1,307, the 137, the 33rd prime. So the question we need to ask for the answer we've all been waiting for: why use the Francis Bacon and the Franc Baconis ciphers? These ciphers can be used to decode scripture, Bible and other sacred texts, theater, poetry, or any form of entertainment involving a storyline, which includes sports. These ciphers can encode magical acts that can manifest into a reality when paired with a powerful deity or deities. Refer back to Thoth, recorder of the deities. And so we have a confirming gematria decode. Francis Bacon Gematria cipher is effective for decoding scripture. 333 reverse reduction. A strong confirmation decode, right? So we have some more confirmation decodes. Francis Bacon in Franc Baconis, 333 in Francis Bacon. String pulls, we have 333 in Franc Baconis. We have Francis Bacon cipher is normally used for decoding biblical scriptures, which equals 333 in single reduction, also in single reduction KV, 3,330 in English extended, and 222 in septenary. That's a lot of strong decodes for that one. Another one, give them a show to control, 333 in reverse Francis Bacon. Then we have decoding literature, 322 reverse Francis Bacon. Then we have the King James Version Bible is coded in Francis Bacon Gematria. Wow, 322 in reverse reduction. 322. Numerology in script is good. 322 English ordinal. 322. Numerology in script is good. Wow. Then we have 133 reduction, 133, in the KV and in the Jewish. So you see those 33s popping up. Francis Bacon in Franc Baconis cipher is great for decoding scripts, 303 in Jewish reduction. Then we have numerology in gematria in script is good for entertainment. That's 1,222 in Franc Baconis. And we also have the King James Version Bible is coded in Francis Bacon Gematria, 1,022 in the Franc Baconis. So you see the 22s popping up. Francis Bacon cipher, 322 in reverse ordinal. So it goes back to 322. And we have in squares, which is just a little interesting, 2,202. That 222. The cipher that decodes in Francis Bacon, 222. Another confirmation. And then show society your magic to control them. We have 440 in reverse ordinal, that 44, the alphabet, Truman Show. And we have 133 in Chaldean and that 2022 in the Fibonacci. So all very interesting and important decodes to why, the Francis Bacon Gematria ciphers are very important. Now we have a sports example, what I'm working on for my documentary and things like that. So I just wanted to bring up one sports example that changed the game for the NBA forever. And when you watch my documentary that's dropping on Patreon at the end of the month, it will make complete sense. And it's the Magic versus Bird rivalry. Lakers versus Celtics. It's all about the polarity, the pillars, and so it goes all the way back to the King James Version Bible. I know I'm cheating a little bit with this, but I'm going to use the new King James Version Bible in their version of Jachin and Boaz, because that's what Magic and Bird were. They were the pillars, Jachin and Boaz. And, they played out a script of them going back and forth. And so I'm going to read this off. Then he set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin. And he set up the pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. So again, this is 1 Kings 7:21. That's the verse there. We understand stories equals 33 reduction. 1 Kings 7:21 equals 33 in septenary, just like a play on words equaling 33 in septenary. And you'll understand when you get more of the Magic and Bird stuff. They both were 6'9", 220. And we've talked about the importance of 1,111 in Francis Baconis. So they both equally 7 to 9 in reduction. But now let's decode that little passage, right? Then he set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple, and he set up the pillars on the right and called its name Jachin, and set up the pillar on the left, called its name Boaz. Magic versus Bird equals 3,333 in Franc Baconis. How strong does it need to be for you to understand? So these ciphers are important to the NBA script at least, but I think on a grander scale to entertainment as a whole, you know, books, poetry, all of it, any type of entertainment that you could call it. And, you know, some more, I'm not going to give you all the gems because you have to wait for the documentary, but look, a little bit more. Sports became religiously scripted in the 70s, and the cipher that decodes professional sports. Look at these connections. 556 English ordinal for both of them. 1,111 Franc Baconis for both of them. 659 in reverse ordinal for both of them. 1,317 reverse Franc Baconis for both of them. The sports became religiously scripted in the 70s. The cipher that decodes professional sports scripts. Wow. That's powerful. And then we have magical literature captivates readers, 1,111 in reverse Franc Baconis. So now I gave you guys a little sneak peek in my last video I did, but now I'm going to give you a little bit more of a sneak peek of the same scene, but it's even upgraded with more effects and stuff. So, and with a couple of Gematria decodes as well. So I hope you guys like this sneak peek. Again, it's going to be dropping at the end of the month, so make sure you join the Patreon to see the full thing. So watch this.
There'll be some important decisions made tonight before this sellout crowd of 15,000.
We are getting set here for what promises to be one tremendous championship game for the National Intercollegiate Basketball title. I don't know what more you could ask. You know, we started this season, 6 months ago. If you'd have tabbed it right then on two of the storybook stories.
The like in secrecy, contained within the most precious of things, one light, one dark, reflections of the self, broken now, except within one's consciousness. The arcane task, to build them up once more, within the confines of the human soul, to stride inside the portal of the ancients, and grasp eternity and its creations. Mother Goddess, mistress of the dream realm, beckon me forth to walk between your legs, but do not crush me as I make my final journey back inside the womb of infinity. Please, great architect of the universe, bestow on me your compass made of gold. Hold me steady as I draw my own circle of life and death and rebirth of my soul.
It all began here in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the night of March 26, 1979. It was the NCAA championship, Indiana State versus Michigan State, a game that still ranks as the highest-rated college final ever on television. A game that's now remembered as a prologue to a rivalry that transformed a sport and intertwined two legacies. But on that night, March 26, 1979, the first time Magic Johnson and Larry Bird ever went head-to-head on a basketball court, they were simply two young men trying to win a very big ball game.
Hopefully you guys love that little upgraded scene I gave you. I'm really excited to drop this documentary. So, you know, stay tuned for that, for the drop. So just a couple more Gematria decodes and we're going to be going on our way. I know this is a long one, but thank you for staying with me because this is important that people learn this and this is out there. So we see sports scripting equals 222 English ordinal. Entertainment industry manifested biblical scriptures, 222 in reduction. Just like NBA script is written with Francis Bacon and Franc Baconis, 222 in English reduction. So look, you see those 222s in sports scripting and all that. It's too obvious, right? But also, look, we have 582 and 528, you know, just that little difference there. And we also have that 309 for both of them and that 93 in the mirror. So guys, like, how much more do you guys need to understand what's going on here, right? And you can use this to your advantage. Good writing equals 69 in reduction. Remember, Larry and Magic were both 6 foot 9 inches. Okay. Numerology in Gematria in script equals 690 in Franc Baconis, and Francis Bacon, Thoth, magical script, 609 in France Baconis, but 69, right? Francis Bacon Gematria cipher unlocks biblical scriptures, 609 in Francis Bacon, and Francis Bacon and Franc Baconis ciphers are for decoding scripture, 690, 69. Magic and reality, visual arts and sports, capital and lowercase, all equaling 74 in the reduction cipher. We have stories in 6 cubed equaling 33 in reduction, so 6 cubed, 666. We have John D, a wizard. I'm going to talk about him in another video along there, but he's the OG wizard, and 6 cubed, both equaling 113 in Francis Bacon, which goes right to, lo and behold, the National Basketball Association equaling 113 in reduction. That goes with Scripture, Gematria Decode, 113 in reduction. And, you know, just a little one, spectators don't reap the rewards. Usually it's more of a distraction than anything. 113 in Chaldean. Illusions equals 113 in reverse ordinal, which goes back to John D and 113 Francis Baconis. He's the OG wizard. Then we have decoding literature with Francis Bacon cipher, 666 reverse ordinal. Decoding scripture using Gematria, 666 Franc Baconis. And acting out a show, 666 in Satanic. That's why we have that 6 cubed in that 33 and 113. You see that. Finally, you guys made it to the end of the presentation. Thank you for watching. Thank you for, chugging through with me. I love doing this, right? So I just want to end it off with a quote, with the other side of the mask, right? We have the William Shakespeare quote to start off, and we have to have the Sir Francis Bacon quote to end it. God has, in fact, written 2 books, not just one. Of course, we are all familiar with the first book he wrote, namely Scripture, but he has written a second book called Creation. And so I broke these down because they're as powerful as well. You see, the only differences for this quote I add at the end, Sir Francis Bacon and William Shakespeare, because they both wrote it. Obviously, it's the same person. 888 single reduction. Then I did 2 books, Scripture and Creation, 1,333 in Satanic. Scripture and Creation, 222 in Jewish ordinal. And so the last one is just that in Franc Baconis, 3,310 in Franc Baconis. But which is interesting with this one, it's 33 words. So, guys, this was an amazing presentation. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. I know it was a long one. And if you got through it, man, you're a trooper and you learned so much. And I love you for it. But there's so much even to go further in this presentation that I will never get to. So, you know where to get this information. Rewatch this video if you have to. Get my Patreon for the PowerPoint if you have to. Do whatever you need to learn this information. I'm trying to get it out there because I love you all. So, with that being said, Art Turner, D.A.T.A. Productions Media, dreams are tangible, aspirations will rescheme our dreams into existence. I love you all. Happy learning, and I'll see you in the next video.